This is CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the program. Our top stories. The leader of Lebanon's Hezbollah group condemns Israel's actions in Gaza in his first public address after weeks of fighting. Our other headlines, the US's top diplomat Antony Blinken back in Israel, seeking concrete steps to minimize the harm to civilians in Gaza. Two ancient civilizations. President Xi Jinping celebrates the ties between China and Greece as he meets the Greek Prime Minister in Beijing. The cryptocurrency industry reels following the fraud conviction of the former billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried. And
Asian films are getting more popular worldwide and very honored.
The 19th Chinese-American Film and Television Festival draws big crowds in Los Angeles. The head of Lebanon's Hezbollah group has condemned Israel's military action in Gaza in his first public speech since this latest conflict began on the 7th of October. Hassan Nasrallah's speech was watched by thousands of followers across Lebanon. Tensions on the country's border with Israel have increased significantly since the Palestinian armed group Hamas launched an incursion into southern Israel, killing more than 1,400 people. Hezbollah, which is Lebanon's largest political and military group, has intensified its attacks, prompting responses from the Israeli military. Well, let's talk now to our correspondent, Zara Al-Dazari in Beirut. Zara, what more did we hear from Hezbollah's leader?
عند الحدود أيها الإخوة يوم السبت في 7 تشرين أول يعني بعد عملية طوفان الأقصى مباشرة.
Well, I'm not sure that our correspondent Zara in Beirut can hear us just at the moment, which I suppose might be understandable given what's going on behind her. We might return to her a little later in the programme. In the meantime, we'll carry on with the rest of today's news. And let's take you next to Israel and talk to our correspondent Sarah Coates, who's going to join us in Tel Aviv. Sarah, any reaction to the speech that's been going on for some time now from the Israeli government?
Well, firstly, there's still no indication as to Hezbollah's next move, and we are still waiting for the Israeli government to respond to that speech that is happening right now in Lebanon. But we can say that tension on that northern border with Lebanon has really been on the rise over the last days. The IDF says it is ready to act in any event, saying that troops are on high alert. And look, this really comes, Jamie, after what was seen late last night, the biggest escalation that we've seen over the past weeks there, including the IDF, including Hezbollah, and also including Hamas militants on the Lebanese side of the border. A number of rockets, a number of drones laden with explosives, that's according to Hezbollah, were flown over onto the Israeli side. Pictures show a huge fire that broke out in the northern town of Kiryat Shimona. Firefighters rushing to extinguish that. So look, it certainly just goes to show how tense that border is. And given what Nasrallah has to say in the next few minutes, we are still waiting to hear that it could become even more volatile.
And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv again. Do we know what he's been discussing with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, look, he had a closed-door meeting with the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, also then meeting with the President, Isaac Herzog, and Israel's expanded war cabinet. He has just held a press conference that may still be underway right here in Tel Aviv at the same time as Nasrallah is speaking there in Lebanon. A few takeaways there. He says as long as the US stands, Israel will not stand alone, but pushing Israel for potentially to pull itself back a little bit, saying that civilians caught up in the crossfire in Gaza must be protected. This was one of his key aims in coming here on this third trip to Israel in around as many weeks, also pushing for more humanitarian aid to get into the Gaza Strip, and finishing up saying that the US has and will continue to respond to Iran and its proxies, vowing that another front should not open.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Well, let's see now if we can talk to our correspondent Noor Harazin in Gaza. Noor, the Hezbollah leader's first speech since the start of this latest conflict. Just explain to us the significance of this speech for people in Gaza.
Well, this is a very important speech for the people of Gaza because somehow they feel that they have been let down by the Arab leaders and the Arab country. They did not do enough for the Palestinian people and for what is happening in Gaza. They take Hassan Nasrallah as a great leader. Thousands are hearing his words, and they know Hassan Nasrallah's position on the people of Gaza and on Al-Qassam brigades and Hamas here in Gaza. They actually know what he will be explaining and speaking. Actually, just before I come live on you, we saw tens of people looking for whoever had some Wi-Fi in his phone or whoever has some electricity in his cafe or his home to gather and watch this very important speech. As I said before, they already know his position for Al-Qassam and the people of Gaza. However, the thing here is that they are waiting to see if there will be any outcome from this speech. Will this be actually a turning point maybe regarding what is happening in Gaza? They are still listening and waiting.
The Israelis say their troops are surrounding Gaza City. What more do you know?
Well, here is the thing. Israel already controls the western side of Gaza, the shores of Gaza, by the Israeli naval forces. During the past days and during Israel's land invasion on the Gaza Strip, they entered to the northern areas of Jabalia and Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia. Same thing happened, an Israeli incursion in eastern Gaza. It expanded to reach what Palestinians here call the 10th Street, and this is a main street that is separating actually Gaza City and northern Gaza from southern Gaza. They also took control of that street, and now the Israeli forces are firing and shooting at any car that has civilians or anyone that is trying to cross from northern Gaza to southern Gaza. This happened to ambulances, UN buses, ordinary cars. Actually, we got footage of people on these streets being left with their injuries, killed, and the ambulances cannot reach them. And this is a clear message to the Palestinian people not to move in or out from northern Gaza. So yes, the Israeli army is now surrounding northern Gaza and Gaza City, and this part is actually being isolated, disconnected from the other places and areas in Gaza.
Noor, thank you for that. Our correspondent Noor Harazin in Gaza. Let me see if I can take you back now to Beirut and see if we can speak to our correspondent there, Zara Al-Derzi. Zara, what more are we hearing from Hezbollah's leader?
Yes, I will start with the latest from the speech of Sayyid Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. He has just declared that Hezbollah were involved in the battle against Israel since October 8th, where the date when Hezbollah launched multiple attacks against the Israeli installation in the occupied territories in southern Lebanon, in the Shebaa farms. Also, the Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, also said that the operations on Lebanon's southern borders are still not enough, indicating that there are many...
Zara, I'm going to break in there and apologies because we are struggling to hear our correspondent there, Zara Al-Derzi in Beirut. We will come back to her during the course of the next few hours or so. Let's carry on with the rest of today's news. And groups of foreign citizens and dual nationals are continuing to try to escape from Gaza through the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Limited numbers have been allowed through during the last 3 days. Many have had to leave behind close family. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim reports.
After weeks of complicated negotiations between different parties of the conflict, stranded foreigners and dual nationals have finally been allowed to cross the Rafah crossing from Gaza into Egypt.
For most of those who managed to evacuate from Gaza, it was for them a feeling like being granted a new lease of life.
CGTN met with Rasha Mahmoud, a Finnish-Palestinian dual national who got caught up in the conflict in Gaza.
I live and am married in Finland. It was the first time my children visited Gaza to see their grandparents. But unluckily, the war broke out, and it was a shock. It wasn't even a war, it's a genocide. Children are being killed in front of us, and my kids had a breakdown.
Palestinian authorities say over 8,000 people have died so far in Gaza. But Russia rejects Israel's claims that the offensive is in self-defense against militants.
I wish the world could see what's happening inside, because you only see 1 or 2% of what's really going on. This war does not target Hamas, as they say. It targets the civilians, the Palestinian people.
Russia and her children had a near-death experience while fleeing the Israeli bombardment at the Rafah border crossing.
We were families in a convoy of cars, but it wasn't safe. The car behind us exploded. I saw their bodies fly in front of me. A split second earlier, and it would have been us. I will return to Finland, but I'm heartbroken over my family. They are still suffering inside. I saved my children, but there are many children dying every day.
Like many dual nationals, they will safely fly back to their resident countries, but leave behind a devastated homeland and loved ones who are victims of a brutal conflict.
According to Egyptian officials, there are about 7,000 foreigners from 60 nationalities stranded in Gaza and who will be evacuated through the Rafah border crossing in the next few days or even weeks. This is Yasser Hakim for CGTN from near the Rafah border crossing, Egypt.
The so-called king of crypto, Sam Bankman-Fried, is facing decades in prison after being found guilty of fraud and money laundering charges in New York. The verdict against the founder of the bankrupt currency exchange, FTX, will intensify scrutiny on the crypto industry, which some critics have claimed resembles a grand Ponzi scheme. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, John Terrett in New York. John, talk us through what happened in court. It all sounds very dramatic.
Well, I was watching from outside, but I have a friend who was working the entire trial inside, so I know that people were stunned when the jury came back with a verdict in less than 4 hours. It was somewhere between 3 and 4 hours. And I should say that the whole trial has been curtailed massively. We thought it was going to go to at least Thanksgiving, which is another 3 weeks away. But in the end, the prosecution, at the behest of the judge, pulled many of the witnesses they planned to bring. And the prosecution was going to do a rebuttal after the defense spoke, and they didn't do that, which is why the whole thing is wrapped up much quicker. Sam Bankman-Fried stood alone in the dock even after the judge had left the courtroom. He was consoled by his lawyer, Mark Cohen, by his parents, who were seen to be tearful but stoic. And then Sam Bankman-Fried was escorted back to jail. Now, my understanding is that Mark Cohen, who is his lawyer, will try to push for him to be released on bail with a bracelet, because he was only jailed, if you remember, for alleged witness tampering, and now now the trial is over, it seems silly really to keep him in jail when he could be at home with his parents until next year when sentencing is. For the prosecution, Damian Williams, who is the lead prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, said crypto is new, Sam Bankman-Fried is new, but fraud is as old as time. And he said, for other fraudsters, we have plenty of handcuffs for you. Mark Cohen, the defense lawyer representing Sam Bankman-Fried, says Bankman-Fried maintains his innocence and will fight to try and stay out of jail or reduce the sentence in some way. Sentencing won't be until March of next year, and he's facing at the moment, up to 115 years in jail, 115. Jamie?
John, fraud and finance trials are often confusing and sometimes fail to reach a verdict because of their complexity, but the jury was so quick on this.
Well, I know, and I think in the end, when everything shakes out, this came down to it being a classic fraud trial. I think the fact that it was wrapped up in cryptocurrency turned out in a way to be a little bit of a sideshow, because basically Bankman-Fried is going to be jailed for stealing clients' money to influence politicians, both Republican and Democrat in Washington, D.C., to create a monopoly. He wanted to create a monopoly and dominate the crypto industry, and he was planning to pull up the drawbridge after he'd done that, once he'd secured relationships with Washington, D.C., which is why the rest of the crypto industry dislike him so much, because he was going to throw them under the bus. And of course, to pay off debts as well that he had, which were mounting. Now, it became impossible for Sam Bankman-Fried, I think, to, once he took the stand and he was talking and talking and talking, digging himself deeper and deeper, but especially once his two best friends, Caroline Ellison, his on-off girlfriend, who was the CEO of another company they ran together called Almeida, and his best friend from childhood, they went to mathematics camp together. They've known each other all that long, Gary Wang. When those two turned against him and gave evidence for the state, I think it was very difficult for him to recover. Now, for cryptocurrency, it must now recover its poise. Hopefully this trial will put others off from doing what Sam Bankman-Fried has been found guilty of doing. And I don't think anybody put it better in the last 24 hours than Jay Clayton. Now, Jay Clayton is the former head of the leading regulator here, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. And he said these words last night. He said, if crypto is to flourish now, it must be regulated. It can't be an offshore dream anymore. And of course, that was the dream of people who were pushing cryptocurrency, for it to be basically not regulated by anybody, not by governments, by any jurisdictions, not by any. It was supposed to be free and run by the people. Well, because of Sam Bankman-Fried and this trial, that will now definitely not happen.
John, thank you for that. Our correspondent John Terrett in New York. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Two ancient civilizations, China and Greece, agree to increase cooperation as President Xi meets Prime Minister Mitsotakis in Beijing.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why? This is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The World Today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The leader of Lebanon's Hezbollah group condemns Israel's actions in Gaza in his first public address after weeks of fighting. Our other headlines: the United States top diplomat Antony Blinken is back in Israel, seeking concrete steps to minimize harm to civilians in Gaza. And the cryptocurrency industry reels following the fraud conviction of the former billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried. President Xi Jinping says cooperation and culture are key to strengthening ties between China and Greece. He's been meeting the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis in Beijing. President Xi said he wants to boost China's partnership with Greece in energy, communication and finance. Mitsotakis hailed what he said were substantial economic achievements in his country since President Xi visited Greece in 2019. Well, Mitsotakis' visit to China is seen as an important step towards deepening ties between the two countries. Greece is a close partner of China in Europe. Diplomatic relations between the two countries were established 51 years ago, and both countries have ancient histories with a rich cultural heritage. China is Greece's fourth largest trading partner. Two-way trade hit a record high of nearly $14 billion in 2022. That's up 14% on the previous year. Greece is also part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Investment from China has breathed new life into the country's largest port of Piraeus. Each year, it serves around 16 million passengers and handles around 5 million cargo containers. Well, a key product shipped through the port of Piraeus is Kalamata olives. The European Parliament approved an EU-China agreement on the mutual protection of traditional food and drink products earlier this year. And that could mean more of Greece's most famous olives could be on their way to China. Our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas reports.
Some call it Black Queen, Greece's famous Kalamata olive. The purple almond-shaped product is one of the most common Greek foods. About 150 kilometers north of Athens, second-generation olive grower Asimina Ageli runs an olive export company. She ships 80% of what she harvests abroad, and with the Kalamata olives included in the list of protected products, she sees that number growing.
Our product itself already has a good name in the global market. Few of us export true Kalamata olives because most of us come from Greece. The product itself doesn't need any advertisement, but the latest announcement of making it a protected product will definitely open more markets and put us more on the map.
The European Union and China recently agreed on assigning special status to 200 food products, granting them geographical indications, or GIs. This means that under this agreement, those products from both the EU and China will be recognized as intellectual property, tightly linked to the location where they've traditionally been produced. Along with its dairy counterpart feta cheese, Kalamata olives have been added to the list, which are now becoming ever more popular in China.
This is the best thing that can happen in the cooperation of the two economies. Not of the two economies, of the world. Because, I mean, this is the next step of improving this sort of cooperation. And for the Greek economy, it is very important to have a huge consuming society and market, as is the Chinese market.
More than 220,000 tons of table olives were exported last year, bringing into the country some $700 million, and all that through the port behind me, Piraeus. While the main destination is the United States and Canada, putting it on a protection list along with further developing the port is now adding new routes to the list.
και για την οικονομία συνολικά της χώρας, αλλά και τις δικές μας.
The extension of the port and our products being listed as GIs will help us further boost our economy. It also allows us to act as a hub for the transfer of other products from both the EU and China, as this will be the first point of entry for products and the last before exiting, in cooperation, of course, with our Chinese counterparts.
Greece has many olive varieties, each with their own unique taste. And as a small nation, it has big competition around the world. But now, with a protection agreement in place, the next time you eat Kalamata olives chopped in a salad, as a paste, or simply raw, you know you're getting the real deal. Evangelos Ipsos for CGTN, Athens.
5 people have been killed and several others are missing after Storm Ciarán brought torrential rain and flooding to Italy. Cars were swept away and people forced to leave their homes as rivers burst their banks in Tuscany. The government's expected to declare a state of emergency with weather alerts still in force for a number of regions. The air quality in New Delhi has reached severe levels. The level of toxic air particles is now nearly 10 times the recommended safe limit. All primary schools are closed, with experts warning that the situation will deteriorate further. It's a reoccurring problem for the Indian capital each winter as colder air traps particles from crop burning and vehicle emissions. The 19th Chinese-American Film Festival, alongside the Chinese-American Television Festival, is underway in Los Angeles. It aims to promote cultural exchanges and cooperation between the film and television industries of China and the United States. Our correspondent Adis Tianshan reports.
Actors, producers, directors, hundreds of Chinese-American creators have gathered in Los Angeles to celebrate their most successful productions of the year.
I feel like Asian films are getting more popular worldwide and very honored, very proud.
The Chinese-American film and TV festivals have both seen a growing number of submissions in recent years, hinting at its growing popularity and influence for the Chinese-American community.
We have a long history of collaborations. It's continue growing, so we hope this bridge will get stronger and stronger.
The festival will continue for nearly a month, featuring films and TV shows in several theaters across Los Angeles. The director of the festival believes that films will bring about a social change.
I think the film is the best platform, best bridge. It's not only for the filmmakers, it's also for the culture exchange, for the friendship.
Attending the gala as a guest of honor, the Chinese Consul General in Los Angeles says the film industry could play a critical role for cultural exchanges between China and the U.S.
Today we are very glad to see that the artists from the two countries coming here and sitting together and to discuss how to promote the further exchanges in the future.
The festival comes at a time of a major labor dispute in Hollywood, with the Actors Union on a strike for over 3 months. Many Chinese-American artists in this room are already looking forward to the next award-winning co-production between the two nations. It is Tianshan, CGTN, Los Angeles.
The headlines again. The leader of Lebanon's Hezbollah group condemns Israel's actions in Gaza in his first public address after weeks of fighting. Our other headlines: the United States top diplomat Antony Blinken is back in Israel, seeking concrete steps to minimize harm to civilians in Gaza. And the cryptocurrency industry reels following the fraud conviction of the former billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried. That is the world today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.